Welcome back to the HBCU NFL Report on HBCU Game Day. We are here with our Super Bowl 57 Part 2 edition, full of HBCU storylines in the big game coming up Sunday, this weekend. I am Symone Stanley, joined always by Luke Williams. Luke, thank you so much. I don't know how I had a Super Bowl playing on Saturday.
Yeah, no Super Bowls on Saturday. No Super Bowl. It's too super to be on a Saturday. It's got to be on Sunday. Absolutely.
Luke, we talked last week on the show about the players that are going to be playing in the Super Bowl, hailing from HBCUs. We're going to re-talk about that a little bit, remind the people who to watch out for on Sunday, but we also have some other storylines to get into. Some people that are going to be on the sidelines coaching and also shaking some pom-poms during the game that have some HBCU ties. Starting with our players, we have 4 players. 3 played in the MEAC, 1 played in the CIAA. All 4 of these guys will be in Arizona for Super Bowl 57. We have Javon Hargrave starting on the Philadelphia Eagles from the South Carolina State Bulldogs. We also have Franklin Mack McCain III coming from North Carolina A&T. He played with the Aggies when they were in the MEAC. So, of course, we are counting that as a MEAC player. And then the Chiefs. They have 2 guys. They want to say we have 1.5 HBCU guys on the Chiefs, Luke. But tell them why we have 2.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah, but go ahead.
So someone said in our comments we have 1 and a possible, like spades, books. But our 1 for sure is Joshua Williams from Fayetteville State University from the CIAA. He was the first HBCU player drafted in this past NFL draft. And we also have Brian Cook, who spent 2 years at Howard University before he transferred to Cincinnati. They are both playing in the secondary for the Chiefs. Luke, can we fully count Brian? I think so.
Yeah, we don't say, to be an alum or an alumnus of a school, you don't have to graduate from that school. You just have to have attended the school. So we're going to use the alum rule. If you look up the definition, it means if you attended, doesn't mean that you graduated. So he is an alum of Howard University. He spent his first 2 years at Howard University, Brian Cook did, before he went home to Cincinnati. Cincinnati was his home school. And out of high school, he was recruited by only 1 school, and that was Howard University. That's where he went. After he made, so to speak, a name for himself at Howard in 2 years, he decided to move to an FBS school. We do the same thing in the league with Nick Leverett, who spent 3 years at North Carolina Central before he moved on to Rice University for his final year. Another guy, Rodney Perry, spent 3 years at South Carolina State. Then he moved to the University of Illinois for his senior year. And these are guys, trying to get their best look in terms of making it into the NFL. Yeah, so we count them. What we didn't do, and actually during the draft, we didn't count Brian Cook because he had been removed from Howard for 2 years. And then the folks that know, the folks that have been around, like Ed Hill up at Howard University, who was there when Brian Cook started his career, reminded us that he, in fact, was a guy who had played in an HBCU, in a sense was an alum of an HBCU. So, yes, we should absolutely count him. I don't think we should discount the fact that he spent his final 2 years at Cincinnati. He played at an HBCU. He knows the HBCU experience, and it was from that. And let me put it another way. We've had countless guys that we count amongst our HBCU alums and members who didn't finish their careers at HBCUs. And it's like, I remember a guy, Isaiah Crowell, who started his career at the University of Georgia, was a rookie of the year in the SEC before he transferred to Alabama State. We don't want to discount that he was in the SEC, and he should be credited for being in the SEC. So, no, Brian Cook played at Howard University in the MEAC, made a name for himself in the MEAC. So we're certainly going to count him amongst the HBCU guys playing in the Super Bowl. And especially when he and Joshua Williams, who there's no question about, spent his whole career at Fayetteville State, teamed for that exciting interception in the AFC Championship game against Cincinnati on a Joe Burrow pass. That was a perfect example for us to highlight the fact that he has HBCU roots, and he tipped it to another HBCU guy. So, hey, we're going to ride with him, and much luck to Brian Cook as they enter and face your Eagles this Sunday.
I'm still keeping my eye on you, Luke. But it's funny how we got to claim him like a cousin. But I just hate the double standards. Like, you can't discredit or discount the experience, the exposure, the knowledge that he had playing at Howard. If not for Howard, would he have even been able to go to Cincinnati? We don't know, but he only had an offer from one school coming out of high school for a reason. And it's like saying a player, like even if you look in the pros, a player could spend 5 years on one team and then the next 2 years they blossom and break out with another team. You don't just, they never played for that other club. And to flip it.
And I can tell you another guy who ended up going to college with one offer. His name was Tariq Cohen. He is the career rushing leader, not only at A&T and the whole MEAC, #2 all-time rushing leader. He stayed at A&T for 4 years. And who knows whether if Brian Cook had stayed at Howard, whether he would have gotten a shot. The bottom line is he did play those 2 years. He did have that one offer, and I agree with you 100%. If not for that offer from Howard, he probably wouldn't even have played college football. Or wouldn't even have had an opportunity to earn his way onto the FBS with Cincinnati. So, like I said, we're going to ride with him. We're going to continue to follow him and track what he did. And the interesting thing is, if we were counting him at the draft, he would have been the first player taken in the draft because he went to the Chiefs in the 2nd round. Joshua Williams didn't go until the 4th round. And then the James Houstons of the world and the Jatiah Carter out of Southerns of the world that went later in the draft, along with Jacoby Durant out of South Carolina State. Brian Cook would have been the first guy. And only because he finished at Cincinnati, we didn't have him in the draft list. But he should have been in the draft list, and he would be actually being projected and covered by us as being the first HBCU player taken in this past year's draft. And in the 2nd round, that tells you that the Chiefs thought a lot of him. But as it turned out, Joshua Williams has played more than he has this season at defensive back. So interesting discussion to have, but certainly we're not going to discount him as an HBCU player because he didn't finish at Howard.
And I just don't like how people like to pick and choose where we can pick and choose who we can claim. Because like you said, James Houston spent majority of his career at Florida, majority of his career at SEC, in the SEC. But every time we bring up James, James I love. But somebody else who started their career at an HBCU, we don't claim him. He finished at Cincinnati. Like, why is it different?
Yeah. Even Aubrey Miller from Jackson State, who played in this week's Senior Bowl, he played 3 years or 2 years at Missouri before he transferred to Jackson State. So we're not going to discount that. So we're in agreement 100%. If you spend a day on the HBCU campus, sometimes we've got guys who signed with HBCUs. In fact, one of the Super Bowl heroes from a few years ago, the defensive back for the New England Patriots, he ended up playing at West Georgia or West Alabama, but he was the one that intercepted the pass at the goal line when the Seattle Seahawks should have given the ball to beast mode and Russell Wilson threw the pick. He got the pick, but he was signed, sealed, and delivered at Alcorn State and was practicing at Alcorn State before he, at the last minute, decided to go. I think it was to West Georgia. But anyway, what I'm saying is, what we try to cover is anybody who has any tinge of an HBCU experience, and certainly Brian Cook, 2 years at Howard University was more than enough to get him on our roster.
You said if you play a day, look, if you step foot on campus, you don't know what from the ancestors poured into you that 1 foot that stepped on campus.
We're going to claim Ed Reed next. See, he was there for a couple of weeks. Ed Reed is an HBCU guy now, but anyway, you know.
So, Lou, super exciting. 4 guys, 3 guys will be playing. Mac is on the practice squad, but 4 guys to root for, 3 guys to look out for on the field in Javon Hargrave, Joshua Williams, and Brian Cook. But we have some other storylines On the sideline.
Let me give you one other tidbit, which is I think we mentioned this. I mentioned this on the last broadcast we did. Is that HBCU players have been at the center of the Super Bowl for all of these 57 years. In fact, there have been 4 HBCU MVPs. It should have been probably about 8 or 9, that they gave them to a quarterback who maybe, didn't throw an interception, but there were other guys who had multiple tackles and interceptions and pick sixes. HBCU players have done all kinds of things in the Super Bowl. The Michael Strahans of the world, the Shannon Sharps of the world, the Jacoby Jones of the world, the Jerry Rices of the world, the Buck Buchanans of the world, the Willie Browns of the world. You just go down the list, not even to mention the Doug Williams, who has been talked to from everyone because of the fact that we have 2 black quarterbacks in this year's Super Bowl. Doug Williams, of course, was the first black quarterback to win the Super Bowl, the Grambling quarterback. So, no, the HBCU players historically have been very critical in Super Bowls. As I said, there have been 4 MVPs, and there probably should have been 10 or more. And that would be 1/5 of the Super Bowls that have been played. So we will keep our eye on Javon Hargrave as well as on Joshua Williams and Brian Cook, because depending upon on this big stage, they could make a play or make a series of plays or have a kind of impact that previous HBCU players have done. That's what we do. We try to chronicle everything that the HBCU players have done historically, and they continue to do today.
Oh, I'm going to need Javon to make a lot of plays if we're going to win this game.
And he's capable. And he's very capable. Multiple sacks is not out of the question. So we'll have to see.
All right, now to the sidelines. We have what a time for the South Carolina State Bulldogs. I feel like that's all we talk about on this show because their representation in the league is just undeniable. From on the field to on the sidelines, under the mic, the coaching mic. Let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles. We have Eric Dickerson. He is a part of the offensive quality control staff. He is a former offensive lineman for the South Carolina State Bulldogs. He actually overlapped with Javon Hargrave. Let's talk about the trenches over there, just translating right to the league. So he ended his career in 2016. Javon ended his career in 2015. So there was definitely some overlap there. And what a moment. Javon Hargrave joined the Eagles in 2020. Eric Dickerson, he started his coaching career at Duke, and then he joined the Eagles in 2021. So what a reunion for those 2 guys to meet back up in Philadelphia, a city of brotherly love, a city of winning culture, and now both of those guys hailing from South Carolina State University are going to be in the Super Bowl. I just love it, Luke, for so many reasons.
And what you said, Symone, is that we talk so much about South Carolina State because they have such a rich history, not only in the NFL, but even in the Super Bowl. I was sent a video this week from Bill Hamilton, who's the SID emeritus at South Carolina State. And they had some young students visiting South Carolina State's campus. And he was talking about, this is just this week, he was talking about the South Carolina State's reputation in the NFL and in the Super Bowl. And I think his number said that there are 29 South Carolina State players that have played in the Super Bowl. And we're talking about Harry Carson. We're talking about Donnie Shell. We're talking about the wide receiver, Charlie, what was his name? Charlie played with the Washington Redskins, but they have a long list of players that not only played in the NFL, but made it to the Super Bowl. And he was, when you speak to young children and they're trying to impress upon them how relevant South Carolina State is as a destination for students to attend, as well as for athletes to come, this is one of the things he was pointing out. So to have, like you're saying, one player on the field and another guy who didn't make it as a player, but has made it in the league, made it to the NFL as a quality control guy, that's big. And he's not the only one. He's for Philadelphia, but there's one for another brother that's not on the sidelines, but is in the booth, that's covering for Kansas City. Let's talk about him.
Ted Cruz, not the politician.
Right.
This guy is a brother.
Yes.
And it's not spelled the same either. The Cruz is not
Exactly.
spelled the same. Ted
Yeah,
Cruz.
not the Ted Cruz that we all know and love to hate from Texas, Cruz, Ted Cruz, the senator. This is Ted Cruz, who's the executive vice president for media for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's the guy, if you watch closely, he's the guy that will be escorting Andy Reid maybe at halftime after the game for media interviews if they win the Super Bowl. God
You
forbid
mean
that from your
escorting him
standpoint.
to the loser press conference room?
Yes, he will be escorting him to the losers press conference if the Chiefs come up short. But he's been there for 12, I think it's 12 years, 11 years now. And he was promoted a couple of years ago. He was a vice president of media, and now he is the executive vice president. He's in charge of the whole media operation for the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, mentioning Bill Hamilton, Bill Hamilton has tutored and instructed a number of young men or young women as well that have gone on to positions in the NFL. Ted Cruz is probably the highest one that Bill celebrates quite often. He'll tell you the whole story about how hard he worked at South Carolina State and proved his merit there at South Carolina State. And look, a lot of the SIDs around, like that have been around, these are old guys that are around my age, like Ed Hill from Howard University, Joe McIver from Morgan State, Chuck Prophet from Mississippi Valley State. He was there with Jerry Rice and with Willie Totten and the guys. They've always instructed and prepared young men and young women to go on and take positions even higher than their positions at HBCUs, and that many of them have gone on to the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, all over. So Ted Cruz is certainly one to be celebrated. This will be his third Super Bowl in the last 4 years. If you see a black guy that's escorting Andy Reid, whether it's to the winner's circle or to the to the losers press conference, it'll be Ted Cruz. So yeah, kudos to Ted for a great career that he's already established in the NFL.
Hopefully, I'll be seeing Eric on the field after the game, and I won't be seeing Ted.
We got that.
On the field after the game. But Luke, a conversation we will have later on the show. What HBCU what's like, I don't know how to word it right now, and I should have brought it up without knowing how to word it, but what HBCU basically is the NFL pipeline of today? We can argue some schools in the past have been those schools that have repped heavy in the league, but it's leaning really towards South Carolina State. I heard two guys, two of my friends, one went to South Carolina State, one went to Jackson State, and they were debating, Jackson State want to pay it. And, the South Carolina State guy, obviously we got current dudes to list off. So that'll be a good conversation. Which HBCU is the producer of NFL talent?
Well, there was no question years ago. If you go back and rosters,
decades ago?
Draft, yeah, it was all about the SWAC. The SWAC was dominating in terms of, I think we talked last week when the Kansas City Chiefs went to Super Bowl I against the Green Bay Packers, there were 9 HBCU players, 5 were from the SWAC. And when 4 years later, when they defeated the Minnesota Vikings, there were 13 HBCU players, 7 of them from the SWAC, and a couple of more teams that they didn't play at the SWAC at that time, but eventually joined the SWAC. So, the SWAC historically has been the leader. But you're right. Over the last decade or more, the MEAC in particular has really come up, and South Carolina State has led that charge. When I compile the list every year of the HBCU players in the NFL, I'd say in the last 10 years, South Carolina State has had the most players, probably 8 of those years, if not 9 of those years. So, yeah, that's something we could certainly circle back and
if you don't let all the cats out the bag now.
Right. But we have to find out. But it is, South Carolina State has been very, very strong. I think this year they had 5 players in the league, and as we know, one of them was Jacoby Durant, the rookie that had 3 interceptions for the Rams, coming off of MEAC Player of the Year. So that'll be an interesting discussion. But we do know that for this game, we're going to have Javon Hargrave repping South Carolina State and Eric Dickerson in coaching capacity, also representing the Bulldogs.
So it is Black History Month. We are Black History every day, every second. It is HBCU game day. You can't have HBCU game day without Black history.
That's right.
But we did talk about this is the first Super Bowl 2 Black quarterbacks will be facing off. Like, wow. And then also, lastly, we got to show the ladies some love. So Autumn Lockwood, she is an assistant coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. She is the first Black woman, period, to coach in the Super Bowl. She can be the first Black woman to win the Super Bowl as a coach. I feel like if you ain't rooting for the Eagles now, I don't know what more to tell you, Luke. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. Now, what does she coach though? What's her position?
She's on the physical training staff.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So she did not attend an HBCU, but it's Black History Month. That is that ain't Black history in sports. I mean, that's just some enormous Black history. But we do have a lady who did attend an HBCU. She is Tamia Casey. She is from Lincoln, Pennsylvania, Lincoln University. She is a cheerleader now for the Philadelphia Eagles. So she is the only HBCU cheerleader on the Eagles sideline. She's going to be representing for HBCU. She's going to be representing for Lincoln and also Pennsylvania. So just a lot of just great Black energy on the Eagles.
Yeah, and that you mentioned the Black quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City, Jalen Hurts for Philadelphia. Been a lot of stories in the media this week. Doug Williams said, after seeing Jalen Hurts clinch to make it, and then watching Kansas City also clinch, he said it brought tears to his eyes because he, for many years, has been the standard bearer. Obviously, neither of them are HBCU products in a sense, but he, as an HBCU product, has been the standard bearer, and he just talked about how great it was to see two Black quarterbacks to be playing in the Super Bowl. And there's been some stories this week about a previous Super Bowl where we had two Black coaches. Lovie Smith at the time was coaching, and Tony Dungy were facing each other in the Super Bowl. So, this progress, continues. Of having Black people as well as HBCU products playing in the Super Bowl, on the field, off the field, on the sidelines, even as you now saying in the cheerleading. And I would imagine there's probably been, I know there's been a lot of HBCU products that have been on cheering squads throughout the league and around the league from coast to coast. So, but to have that young lady in the Super Bowl, of course, is another feather in the HBCU cap for sure.
Well, Super Bowl 57 is quickly approaching. Here are all the well, I'm sure not all, but here are many storylines on the HBCU NFL report. It's going to be a good game. That's all I can say. I have a lot, obviously, invested in this game, but I'm going to be rooting for, of course, it's Black History Month, everybody that's Black, and, of course, everybody in green, and we have a lot of crossover between the Eagles, Black History Month, HBCU. So like I said, if you need any other reason to root for the Eagles on Sunday, Luke could try to spew this propaganda from half a century ago, or maybe why you should root for the Chiefs. But no, it's present day.
I'll just say to you, Symone, good luck. I just hope it's a good game. Sometimes the game does not live up to the hype. I think this will be one that will. And I look forward to a good game, and I wish you and your Eagles good luck on Sunday.
And I wish you and your Chiefs good luck, too. Guys, this is part 2, Super Bowl edition of the HBCU NFL Reports. I am Symone. He is Luke. This is HBCU Game Day. Thank you guys so much for joining us.